The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
So, yeah, I'm no longer allowed to wear this costume anymore. It's I had this parasitic twin that is on my shoulder, and so I'd go as like good cop, bad cop, and I did a pirate, and I put a little beak on it, so it was a costume with a costume, and so it was my little parrot. But yeah, my daughter, when she was like, this was maybe too young. She was like 6, 7, 8. She was like, we named it Ted, and she's all, "You aren't wearing Ted this year, are you?" So I've been banned from wearing that for years. Ted has not come down from the attic, and I think that still kind of frightens her. But anyway, hello.
It's always a wedding someday.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. It is Halloween, but we are exploring something entirely different. We are talking about the impact of community, wellness, and connection in business. I'm Steven Sagash here again with Mike Lusky and our special guest. We are live, so if you have questions or comments, send them along, and we'll try to get them in the mix during our conversation like we do. Mike, introduce our guest today.
Absolutely, Steven. It would be my pleasure. Our guest today is not only a good friend, but she's also an absolute firecracker, as you'll see hopefully through the show today. So it's my absolute pleasure to invite Deborah Miller. She's not only a certified yoga instructor, but she's also the visionary behind YNG Studios, which is one of our local businesses here in San Clemente. She's renowned for her unique approach, particularly, which blends ancient wisdom with modern movement practices that really appeal to people of all backgrounds. Her journey into yoga started as a healing path. After multiple surgeries and a competitive athletic career, which we'll hear a little bit more today later in the show. Ultimately, this transformed her life, helping her and leading her to a career dedicated to wellness and community. Deborah's commitment to balance, health, and purpose, which we know are key elements of our show, extends beyond her studio, including her work as a missionary and community work that she's done building in Africa as well as here in the U.S. Through YNG Studios, Deborah has created a space that fosters community, resilience, and vitality, especially for those facing health challenges and aging. And as she said, she's coming in hot. She's already taught a couple classes today. So we know our audience is enthused to hear from you today, Deborah. So with that, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Deborah, I'm always interested in someone who's had that competitive athletic background and how that comes out in their business life. In your case, as Mike mentioned, things kind of drastically changed for you with your surgeries and health and how that led you down your path. Can you give a little background on that?
Sure. The sports background, I think, really does create one. I played on teams. And so teams being a member of a team, being a part of the greater whole was excellent in kind of pre-training for me to be a business owner, because it's not just all about you. It's like, it's all about us, and it's like the community and what we're creating. So, the sports, I think, one, developed that, like, sometimes, you have to be the sacrifice so that the team can do better. It isn't just about like, how am I shining? It's like, how is everybody shining? How is everybody gonna, elevate? So that was, like one aspect where I thought, sports was very ideal in my background, but also the competitive nature. I think to be a business owner, you have to have a very high sense of drive and playing sports and being part of, practice, just like this ongoing commitment to the sports I was playing, allowed me to apply that to my business as well.
And you've got to have resilience too, I think. And Mike mentions like your surgery. So that led you to your path with your current career, right?
Yes. Yes. So, I think in sports, you do have to learn how to like win gracefully, but also lose gracefully, because you're not always going to win. And the losses also really are your biggest and best tools for teaching.
Yeah.
Always good to be when it's easy to be, great and kind and sweet when you're on top, but can you be gracious and kind and sweet when you're not? And the back surgeries were like a very, like a marker, like sort of BC, like before that happened and after that happened. And before my surgeries, I don't think I really understood the quality of balance of nurturing my health and wellness. And it was very off. And I kind of came from the generation of like, rub some dirt on it and get back in the game if you're hurt, like there is no quit, there is no rest, like you'll sleep when you're dead, let's go. And so it was such an intense drive. And the back surgeries definitely put a period at the end of the sentence in that moment. And then it was recommended to me that I try yoga as a means of like healing my back and getting back into some mobility. And I really thought like, oh, that's the worst thing I could have been told, because yoga did not seem like it didn't capture my interest in that time. And I was just so wrong. It was like the most amazing thing. And yoga taught me to slow down. It's taught me balance. It's taught me, more patience and kindness. And it really like leaned into my belief systems with God and my missionary work. And it just like, it folded in so uniquely with everything of life. And I thought yoga was like a bunch of people sitting around a room just chanting Om, and just sitting. And I thought it would be really boring. And it is none of those things. It's fascinating. It's a 10,000-year-old practice. And the reason that it has stayed for so many years is because of the fidelity of teachers teaching other teachers to bring it forward through the generations. And it did really teach me so much more. And I want people to have that in their wheelhouse, like we're teaching our kids yoga so that they have it for their whole life, not finding it after an injury. So my goal, especially having had the back surgeries, is to get in front of people before they're injured and before they've like damaged themselves to a point to where they're just unsure that they're even going to have a life. Because that's what I thought when I had my back surgeries. I thought it's over, like everything's over.
Did you have a sense that you found your calling or yourself early on when you got into it, or was it just something that came later where the more you got into it, then you suddenly went, oh, wow.
I think okay. So I honestly took like my first hot yoga class in the studio that I'm currently owning right now. So it was just happenstance that I found it. And I treated it like how I would treat sports. Like I was going to Africa. I had never been to Africa before. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I assumed it was going to be really hot. So I decided that since my doctor told me I should do yoga as a means of therapy, I'm going to find the hottest yoga studio I can find. And this is going to help train me and prepare me for going on missionary work. So I signed up for 30 days. I went every day, sometimes twice a day. And in my mind, it was just like, I'm just going to do like the physical part, just sit in this hot room and, see how it feels. And the beautiful thing was like by going every day and just and getting immersed in like the culture of yoga, by the end of that 30 days, I was not only so hooked. I mean, I knew that it was going to be a vessel of transformation, not only for me, but I think for other people as well.
That's really well put.
Yeah. Following up on that just real quick. So you kind of mentioned that thinking about other people in that. So we often talk about a third place outside of work and home that people go to, that other place in the community. So was it a sense of service to others that kind of led to your business approach or your community-driven approach?
I mean, I feel like I can attribute that to my parents, who are also both teachers. My mom was a elementary school teacher, and my dad was a junior high teacher, and then went into being administration, like a
You
principal.
saw it kind of modeled with the
So
community.
I was definitely modeled that, that teaching, that giving, that sharing. Like, information isn't meant to be like just held to yourself. It's like the more you share, the better we all can be. And again, that kind of also goes back to like the idea of what it felt like to be on a team. Like, I was so much better being in a group setting than I was being on an individual setting, in my mind anyway. So yeah, I felt really deeply called. I was a hairdresser for 35 years or 30 years before I started, becoming a yoga instructor. And I love serving people, making them feel good about their outward appearance, and it is a feel good job. It's like you're with them for an hour or two and they feel great, and it's shiny and great. But it's like, this is deeper, it's like I'm getting to like make people feel good from the inside out.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's a great point. And obviously, it shows the good sense of, being unselfish in that sense. So Deborah, I know before the show, we chatted a little bit about the Blue Zone principles, and, how those, have been emphasized sort of in, around purpose, and they emphasize community, and they're these keys to longevity. So maybe for our audience who isn't really as familiar with the Blue Zone principles, can you help explain them a little bit, and then maybe tell us how you've used those in your business?
Sure. The Blue Zone principles is the idea that there are places within the world that people live well past 100 years old, and they're not doing anything crazy. This isn't a new idea or a new concept. This is just how they live. And it doesn't mean that you have to live in some like far off, like third world country. And, it's like, there's Blue Zones here. There's a Blue Zone, I believe, in Loma Linda. So, it's possible to create Blue Zones right here, like right now, like right where you're living. And I feel like we have the elements to do that. And so for those who don't, know what the Blue Zone is, it really is integrating the ideas of, eating healthy and moving your body, living in community, living with purpose. And I might be missing a few other things, and, it's like, and it kind of evolves around that. But, I think one of the biggest things, like, eating is a big deal. Like, and I can go really deep into like the eating aspect of it. But, like the more we live in like busier cities, it's a toxic environment, so it's like really trying to like clean up some of those things that where you can, like, do your best when you can. I sort of am in that 80-20 principle, but I sort of lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Yeah,
no, I think
you're good.
It's like about making those healthy choices the easy ones, right? So that you just kind of, flow into. I remember the story about Google. They used to have, they still do. They've got these elaborate, like snack bars and things at Google that you go to. And when they first started out, they had like all the junk food, the chips and the different, candy bars and stuff out front. And then there was this thing that came along that they called, I think, the Google 10 or Google 15 pounds that you gained when you joined Google. And so they're like,
like a freshman 15.
Yeah, we're not doing good here. And so what they did is, well, why don't we just put the healthy choices up front and make them the simple, easy choices? And we'll still keep the other snacks if they want them, but they'll be in a drawer or in a cupboard. Yeah. And then they saw those numbers just kind of drastically lower, just because it kind of made that healthy choice the simple thing for them. And I think that's, the easy thing for them. And I think that's like one of the traits of like those Blue Zones, is that it's just real easy to do the healthy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do tend to be gravitating towards what's convenient and easiest and fastest. And so, I think in a lot of communities, it is difficult when pricing of food and things are so expensive, and the easier, faster thing is to get something that's more processed and less expensive. And so there is a level of commitment, but there are so many ways to create, healthier eating patterns and things that you can do that are cost efficient. But it is a commitment. It might even be like creating your own garden in your backyard. It might be, growing some of those things that, you want to utilize, because now you know what this is in the soil, how you're caring for it. You're also getting some sunshine by taking care of your garden. You're also doing some activity by tending to your garden. And those are all part of like what creates a blue zone. And like, just to get like a tomato to grow, you've just created 3 of the 4 or 5 things that are really kind of required to have that opportunity to have that full and complete blue zone. Like individually, they're all still good, but when you put them together, wow, now you've got this opportunity to like have a full and fully embodied life. Living to 100 sounds amazing, but it doesn't sound amazing if the last 20 years you're hooked up to an oxygen tank and you're like in a bed, like we're leaving good years on the table. I was watching this comedian the other day, and he was like making some jokes about like, well, if you're 40, you've only got like 20 good years left. So, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, I just turned 60. I count on another 40, so I'm not looking to, have like a long life that's not in a body or a vessel that I've been taking care of. And so it's all possible.
Yeah. So Deborah, I think it's really interesting, like that you mentioned that sense of purpose, or like finding your purpose. Also I think, part of the blue zones is this thought about belonging, right? As you sort of mentioned, like having a community, having your right tribe. So I'm curious, with those principles in particular, how have those ideas shaped your approach to business?
Well, let me say this, that, there is a loneliness epidemic, and especially, like after COVID. I mean, COVID just, was such a difficult time for so many people because they were so isolated. And look at what happened to the numbers of our world. It was horrific, really. And so, I'm trying to like find my numbers. I saw an article the other day where like Seoul, Korea,
right?
Not China. Seoul, Korea is spending somewhere like $367 million to try to alleviate the loneliness epidemic. And it's like, you can roll that 367 million to me, and I can tell you, it's like, you just have a commonality, a common ground, a common space. It's almost like it's an agreement, like we're agreeing to live in community together. And so, you're finding like-minded individuals. So for my business in particular, like yoga, many people come in here not because they just want to get a physical practice. Some people do, and it's all good. Like whatever brings you in the door, great. I'm super stoked about it. But a lot of people come in for the reasons of like being lonely. They might be going through a breakup. They might have had an injury. Their doctor might have told them to come. Their friend might come. But, like whatever it is, most people come in to yoga for some kind of a healing purpose, whatever that might be. So that kind of common level is like, there's a kindness that is just here because we all understand that we all come from a place perhaps of hurting, and you can't look at somebody from the outside and go like, you're great, I'm the only one that's hurting. It's like, and I think that's like a lot what comes in with like empathy and compassion in a business model, is to say like, I see you, I hear you and I see you. And so that's been very important in like in creating the culture for like my business.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm sure you probably have some stories of people that have come in through the door broken, and you've probably seen transformations take place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this one gentleman in particular that I love and adore him. And he has Parkinson's, and yoga for him is transforming him. He was having difficulty with stability and movement. And, I'm very familiar with what Parkinson's is. And to see him like showing up and doing the work and doing the practice. And it's beyond just like the delivery of like, this is how you're going to stretch your body and it's going to feel better. It's like, there's the philosophies of yoga that get imparted, the spirituality of yoga that gets imparted, the connection to God that gets imparted. That I think is what makes it a fully embodied experience. So I love when I see things like that with him. We have cancer survivors, that come in when they're, just maybe starting their therapies, or, the chemos can be so toxic, but these are life-saving, so Eastern and Western medicines are super important. I don't necessarily say like, get rid of the Western stuff and only do this, no, I think that they both have such tremendous value. But to have people come in that are struggling with their cancer, and they feel so alone in it, and now they're embraced by everyone, in their health. So it's really important.
That's awesome. Yeah, I wanted to just really emphasize this point around purpose that you mentioned. There's actually a report on the NIH website, and it spoke about in this report that we need to have almost like a vocabulary for our purpose. It went on to say that it studied 6,000 people over 14 years, and they found that those people who could articulate their sense of purpose had a 15% lower risk of dying. And again, those that could articulate their sense of purpose and ended up living 7 years longer. So really, really a huge impact having that at our core. So we got a question here from our audience, Deborah. Question is, how would you advise entrepreneurs to balance the need for mindfulness and purpose with the often fast-paced demands of running a business? Ooh, that's a really, really good question. Thank you.
That is a great question. It's very easy to get sucked into like, how am I going to make money, and just be driven by just the dollar, and for me in my business, I look at money more like energy versus like a very specific dollar, and so and I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, and I will be happy to try to elaborate if I'm not sounding like it's clear.
Yeah.
But like what you give, it always comes back to you. It's a flow. So if you think of money like an energy exchange, like whatever you're putting out into the world, especially when you're putting it out with goodness, like there's just this reciprocity that it comes back to you, and if you're only wanting to put out with the anticipation and expectation of getting something in return, or you're not putting out and you're just expecting to get, it's going to be difficult, because people need to feel like invested in you, in your business, but also like in the idea and concepts of your business. So, mindfulness, I think, is really important to understand, like what is the why behind why you're getting into business? Not just like, I want to have a restaurant. Well, why do you want a restaurant? Well, I want a restaurant because I want to serve healthy food. Well, there's great, or I want to, serve a community that's under, served, or whatever it is. Like what, when you really understand your why, which is purpose, like what is your purpose behind your why, which creates mindfulness. And then the cycle begins to like become into that reciprocity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely helps answer. And I think, put the money aside is sort of what you're saying, right? Put the money aside or leverage it for your purpose, right? And have that exchange of energy. Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I think that's a good point, Mike, on that, leveraging it for your purpose. I think that's where, you put that, like you said, Deborah, like the energy actually goes into a good place, is if you're really purpose focused with how you spend the money. And that's really kind of the next tier of business, I think, is a couple traits. And one is they know their purpose really well, and they're looking at all their systems in their business, and it's like, how does this apply to our purpose, and how can we make it, apply more to our purpose? And so I think that's a huge part. And then the other part of business, like the future of business, I think, is really this concept of just employee kind of wholeness, where it's like exactly these like blue zone sort of thoughts and approach to business is like, we're thinking about the entire person. We're thinking about not just, how well did they perform, their job, but it's like, how are they doing,
right,
in life?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that, Deborah? Do you see like the way forward with business is going after that sort of blue zone sort of mentality?
100%, because like you're really creating a family outside of your family. I mean, for most of us, we spend more time at work than we do at home. So, like the people that you're working with, you want to nurture them and care for them and know about them, and not just like, did you show up on time? Did you clock in? Did you clean the toilets? Like, then it's very transactional, and transactional doesn't feel like fluid. Like there's not a flow to that. Everybody, needs a paycheck. I'm not, I'm not denying the importance of earning when you own a business. There's overhead, there's costs, and that's important. But if what you're trying to put out doesn't align with who you are and what your purpose and your belief system is, it's like they're never going to intersect. They're always going to be in opposition of each other. So it's almost like those magnets that, they repel versus like connecting, so paying attention to the ebbs and flows of your staff, like what's happening in their life. Are they caring for, somebody that's not well? Are they not well? I think it's very important because there's a saying in yoga that's like, your vibe attracts your tribe, so it's like, if you are, if you are centered and you're aligned, then the things that you're going to bring in are going to be exactly aligned with what you are and what your purpose is. If it's not, it's okay, because there is a tribe for them too. Like you can't be all things to all people, and that is okay. And it's okay for someone to like not, be a part of what you're creating. There's so many people that will, if you just focus on you and your why and your purpose and creating your community.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a huge problem we have is it's just that sole focus on profit. And it's pretty much like Wall Street's run on this, and all companies, it's probably about 85% of companies, 90%, some huge, massive number where it's just, I'm only thinking about this one stakeholder. It's the investors and, what my return is going to be on investment. And it's not thinking about employees, not thinking about community, not thinking about your customers or your partners. And so I see us as kind of almost addicted to that and stuck in that for a lot of people. What advice would you have for some of the leaders of these types of companies to really start expanding their focus beyond just a single-minded approach?
Well, honestly, we do corporate work, where we talk with corporate leaders and bring them in to kind of decompress them, so that they're not just so driven in only one lane. It's like, I think a good leader is able to like open into many lanes. And if you're only focused on the bottom line dollar, then you can almost look at somebody and see like the unhealthiness that is around them. It's like it may be that they're not exercising. It may be that they're not eating well because they're so driven on working and getting into the, the financial aspect of it. So it's like, it's really getting to know corporate leaders on a more personal level, because really when it's only about the dollar, then you don't know somebody, because they're only going to show you like what they want you to see. And it's only going to be like superficial, because money is sort of superficial in that way, right? It can be flashy. It could be, whatever. But I think it's really important to like, when you start to get to know like those leaders who are in that mindset, and find out like what is making them tick. Like, how can I open up your mind to expanding? Because you'll make more money if you do these other things. You'll, like all this money that you're making, don't you want to live longer for it? Don't you want to be able to experience it and share it? So, I think that it's important to, really see them also compassionately and empathetically, because it comes from their history of why they are so driven only for that one purpose, which is the bottom line dollar. And, and to hopefully expand their minds to see like there is so much more to life than only the bottom line dollar. It's important. I mean, we all need money to live. That's, we can't trade a chicken for an egg, or, we don't have that kind of a marketplace. But I think opening their mind to a little bit more of a balanced opinion of that. I think there's so many studies that show like if you are committed to nurturing your staff, to getting to know your staff, they are so loyal to you and they will work so much harder for you. It's like, and you don't have to ask them to do that. And it's not manipulative. You're not trying to manipulate them, because you're working harder for them too. So I think that it's, again, I go back to that word of like reciprocity, like living in reciprocity can be really important for corporate leaders to understand it's not just about them. Like it doesn't just, it's like they're not even the bottom line, because it's like if they don't have those people underneath them, then they won't have that business to be building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that decompressing. So, and you talked about kind of that empathetic approach with them, like getting to know them, getting to connect with them. Is that kind of the first approach you take with that, sort of decompressing? I need this person to kind of open up a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's just like getting them outside of their environment, like you bring them into, we'll go to them as well, but it's like bringing them into the studio, like the vibe of the studio is already like a little relaxed, and you try to get them outside of just their normal, day-to-day structure so that they can feel like it's safe to be vulnerable and maybe share something that they might not typically share if you're sitting in their office and they're in a suit and tie and, they're, talking about like spreadsheets and bottom line dollars. It's like, we're going to just put that aside. Let's talk about some other things, like I'm going to really get to know you as much as you'll allow me to get to know you in this moment without judgment, so really like, I think it's important with empathy, compassion, but also like to really truly not judge, so that somebody feels safe to be able to say something to you and you're not just like, well, that's not something I would do. It's like, no, this is their journey. The people that are actually I don't know how G-rated I need to be, but the people who are the most, effed up or, like kind of in that headspace, they're the ones I want. They're the ones that need it the most. It's like, I want to see that light come on and have them get it and pull them in, because man, that is where transformation happens. And then you already know that they're capable of making money. Now they can like just grow exponentially.
Yeah. And I think like one of the first traits we kind of see for people to, as they're moving along that role, and I imagine you might see this, but is that, like you said, they're sort of in this dominator hierarchy role of this is, I'm the boss, and they've got sort of this, almost duplicitous nature of they aren't their authentic selves when they're in that role. And then when you can kind of get that authentic self to show up, then you kind of see, well, now can you switch to a role of being in service to other people versus, like, how can I help you be better at your job as a leader? And I think that's really one of those kind of transformational stages that gets them off of that sole focus of profit that we talked about.
And I think that was such a good point. I love the way that you put that. Because I do think that sometimes people can get way overly concerned with optics, like how people are, how they think people are perceiving them, because you don't know, because it's their perception, not yours. So it's like my perception of your perception. It's like, it's so meta. As it goes back and forth all the way down. But it's like, if you can kind of let that go, like, honestly, I feel like I work for my team, like they work for me, but I work for them. I really do, so it's not like I'm the boss and what I say goes. And, I would, if you asked, I think anybody that worked for me, they know, like, I'm one of the harder working people in the studio because, like I'm here in service, and that service makes me feel fulfilled. And it allows me to like hopefully share that with other people who are in leadership, because it is about, like showing that you're not too good to do anything. You should be able to do every single thing in your business and honor that.
Yeah. That would contribute to the longevity of the business itself. Right. Because you're building that within your employee base. I always love to grab a quote, Deborah, from these shows, and I'm definitely going to jot down your vibe is your tribe, because I think that is so true. And in the work that we do as an agency, what is your website putting out? What is your marketing saying about you? Is it just saying, hey, transact with me? Mm-hmm. Or are we trying to build community? Are we trying to really get behind our purpose and find your tribe? And like you said, I think like it comes out perhaps in people, it comes out in businesses too, right? And really, what vibe is it that we're putting out there? I want to talk, Deborah, a little bit about some of the work that you did, the missionary work, right?
Sure.
And so you've led a life that's combined, the experiences of an athlete, as you've talked to us, and some of the missionary work. So I'm curious, like, how have those different aspects, particularly the missionary work that you've done, help to like influence, I guess, your approach in building connections or fostering the community in your business? What did you learn from that work, and then how did you bring it, I guess, into the business realm?
Well, one of the first things I really learned is that the very first time that I went to Africa, I was so excited. I've been wanting to go to Africa since I was a little kid. Like, when the commercials would come on to adopt a child from Africa, when I was like in third grade, I would be like writing in and I would tell my parents, like, we're adopting a child. And they're like, no, we're not. But it's like, there was something that got put on my heart at a very young age that for whatever reason, like, Africa was on my heart and on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I even tried to join the not the army, but not the Red Cross.
Peace
Oh my
Corps.
gosh, what's that?
Peace Corps?
Yes. But I didn't have a college education, so they wouldn't take me. And I'm like, I'm just willing to do whatever. If you tell me to move a pile of rocks here to there, I will move that pile of rocks. But, it like my life kind of went on and it got a little bit back burner. But then finally, when that opportunity came up, it's like I was all in. And I went there with this like attitude or idea anyway, perception, if you will, that I am going to be bringing them amazing things. I'm going to be bringing them, clean water, and I'm going to be bringing them, like how to like live better and, like we do here. And I left and none of that applied. Yeah. Except for the fact that we did bring clean water. Yeah. But, it's like, they are living happy lives. They don't need to change. Like, they didn't need me to come in there and tell them to live like we do here in America. Like, why is our way better anyway? Like it was so humbling. And it's like, they taught me so much more than I could have ever taught them, And so again, it's like this shared energy, this reciprocity, this genuine love for each other. Like, I would go there and they would, offer me their last serving of rice, their last, whatever it is that they had. And they live in community. I would see children running all over the place. And I think, where are the parents? Like, they're going to get hurt. They're going to get hit by a car. They're going to get kidnapped. All the things that we would think about if our kids are out of sight, out of mind. And they told me that like the children of the village are everyone's children. So they all kind of like corral the kids. They all discipline the kids. They feed the kids. If a child gets hurt, you help the children. If I had, if I'm a villager and I have $10 and you're a villager and you need to pay a bill and you need $10, it's yours. There's not a thought to say like, oh, it's too bad. I wish you had that $10, but good luck, and so there is just this, like, they live very in the moment. They're not necessarily like forward thinking into, the way off future. They're really very presently living. And that was like such a good lesson, which tied in so well with the kind of business that I was creating here with the yoga studio.
Yeah, that is really amazing and transformational. How, other parts of the world could, we think we're so advanced, and yet they can teach us so much about the basics.
Yeah. In some ways we are very advanced, but in some ways it's like advancements are going so fast that we're losing our humanity. And that's why loneliness is such a massive epidemic. And it's like loneliness takes like up to 15 years off of your life expectancy. So like that community is so vital. 15 years, 15 years of good quality life that you could have, it's like eat well, eat of the earth. We don't have to eat meat. We can get every single thing that we need from vegetables. I promise you, we can get all the 9 amino acids. We can like support and heal our mitochondrial wall. And I won't go that far into it, but I'm telling you, it's possible. And, but we tend to just go to what's simple and easy. And I know that we can add years of quality life to all of our members of the community.
Yeah.
Deborah, one final question before we go. Sometimes this is a topic that business leaders are uncomfortable with, but I doubt that's the case here. Given all that you've built in the lives you've impacted, what would you say to those who believe that love doesn't belong in business?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first of all, love belongs everywhere because love is a muscle. It's something that love is gratitude, is thankfulness, and love is a powerful muscle. And if you don't use it, it atrophies and dies. So I feel that, when you come from a place of love, which we're all made of love, by love, for love, period. So if you're not like leaning into what you are made for, which is by love, of love, for relationship with your creator, for love, then life is going to always be difficult. Your business will be difficult. You will find that you're not growing in the ways that you want to grow. It's selfish. And so, there is a need for self-love, but that self-love reflecting out into the world to create love with others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Actually, we always get such great answers on that, and they're always a different. And it's like this. We're going to do a show where we take everyone's answers on there and just put them all together, because it usually is just a beautiful statement. Deborah, where should people go to contact you or find out more about what you do?
They can find us on Instagram. They can find us on www.yngstudios.com. That's our website. We're in San Clemente. We might be moving into another space soon. You never know. But I am hoping that we're going to be able to expand the goodness that we're doing here. YNG is the amalgamation of yin and yang. So really trying to create harmony in life's always opposing energies, and really understanding that, that balance is possible.
Deborah, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm sure our listeners are walking away with a lot to think about. And thank you to our listeners. On our next show, Tuesday, it's election day, and we're talking about the Haudenosaunee tribe and how its practices influenced how the United States was formed, and how you can actually apply some of those principles to your business. We will see you then on the next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.